Hello, all, and welcome back to another episode of the Fintech Diaries. If you are tuning in for the first time, welcome. Quick introduction on my end. My name's Jack, and I'm one of the recruitment consultants here at MCS, and I specialize in financial technology. In terms of, I suppose, look, as a business, we love to get really ingrained into the communities that we actually operate and specialize in. So, as part of a new initiative, I've been spending time over the last number of weeks having a chat and sitting down with senior leaders of different fintech organizations. Today, I had the pleasure of connecting with Andrew Dawkins, and he's a CTO of Esentia Analytics. I'm going to let him tell you a little bit more about what they do coming up next.
Good afternoon, Andy. How's things? Thanks very much for joining me today.
Good afternoon, Jack. Yes, pretty good. Thank you for inviting me.
No, all good. Look, we'll get tucked into to question one then. So, I suppose before we dive into talking about Esentia Analytics itself, do you mind sharing a bit of a bit more about your background and then your path into the tech industry as such?
Yeah, of course. So, for me, I've always had a love of computers and a love of programming. It stems all the way back. My earliest memory was at the age of 8. I was working with my father on a ZX Spectrum, programming in BASIC, and we had you could get like a subscription with magazines, and in the magazines you'd have source code, and you could type the source code out. And, you spend like hours and hours and hours typing the source code out, and it never worked first time. So then I called my father over, and he'd help me debug it, and that was kind of my introduction, and in a way my learning of how to program. From then all through school, that's all I wanted to do. At school, I just wanted to be on the computers and program. I went to college, Farnborough Technology College, and whilst I was there, I got a part-time job at a local tech company, and I was working with Lotus Notes databases. When the time came to go to university, my employer said, "Don't go to university, I'll give you a full-time job." So I had a tough call to make. So I didn't go to university in the end, which sometimes I regret, but other times I don't. Having 2 years in industry was fantastic. While I was doing that job full time, I got really heavily interested in the works of Kent Beck and extreme programming, and paired programming in particular. Managed to implement some of their practices within the company I was working for, but it was quite small, but it very, very much piqued my interest. Since then, I've worked a lot with databases and data ingestion and processing. I worked for primelocation.com and findaproperty.co.uk, where when I started, I was the sole data engineer. But by the time I left, I was the head of data. I had 2 small teams working for me, one in London and one in Brighton. And in this period, I got heavily interested in agile methodologies. So starting to look at Scrum and retrospectives and plan in poker and implement some of those ideas within my teams of engineers. I've also worked in e-commerce. So I worked for glassesdirect.com and sunglassesshop.co.uk. It was the same company, owned both products. There I was the head of technology, reporting to the CEO and responsible for 3 engineering teams in Python, PHP, and .NET. My current role, I joined Esentia Analytics as the VP of engineering. I've been here for 5 years and have recently stepped up to the CTO position after the previous CTO moved on. And here at Esentia Analytics, following the process, we're now doing a lot on Kanban and forecasting. And I've been very interested in the works of Troy McGuinness at Focused Objective.
Fantastic. And what about in terms of then the history or background then of Esentia then, and I suppose its services or core business model?
So Esentia was started 10 years ago by a former fund manager who really wanted data-driven feedback on the quality of her decision-making. So what Esentia does is effectively the same as what a sports analytics might do, but for professional fund managers instead. And we aim to help fund managers improve their performance and to help people who select fund managers to separate skill from luck. We analyze portfolio trades and holdings data on a daily granularity over a period of 10 years or more. And from that, we analyze all the data and we can identify past behaviors and biases. We provide everything from a high level rating, which we call the behavioral alpha score, to an in-depth analysis involving both analytics, software, and consultancy services.
Excellent. Very good. As a business, in the last sort of 10 years since being founded, then, I mean, what sort of obstacles have you guys had to encounter along the way?
So the biggest obstacle as a startup in the finance industry is funding. Okay, it's been very difficult over the years to raise money, and as a result, we've never had the luxury of bringing on all the resource that we want to, and in order to build everything that we envisioned. We've had to learn lessons about making and communicating difficult prioritization decisions. But we've also learned to be very resourceful with what we did have. From a technical perspective, some of the hardest challenges have been around scale. Okay. So those first few years of startup where I wasn't with the company, it was very much focused on getting a product to market, a product that works. And I'm sure this is a story that you'll see in lots of startups. But by the time I joined, like 5 years on, it was all about scaling.
Okay.
So, we had a product, the product worked, the product went to market, but does it scale for the customers we're getting? Does it scale for our future objectives? And yeah, I'd say that's one of the biggest challenges we've had technically.
Okay. On that note of future objectives, what are the future plans for the company? Give me a bit of an overview. I believe there's a new product on the way, if I'm right in saying.
There is. So at the moment, we're all very excited about our new peer benchmarking product, which is aimed at allocators of capital to fund managers, and the marketing teams of those fund managers themselves. We've done a lot of work technically, which I'll go on to into a bit, but it is really straining that scale, because in order to make the sort of the peer benchmarking product meaningful, we've needed a lot of data from a lot of portfolio managers in order to do that comparison. If you've only got a handful, it doesn't mean anything. So it's really stretched the seams of our scalability.
In terms of then, obviously, look, this is a technology-focused podcast, so it would really be right to ask the next question in terms of, could you tell us a little bit more about the technology you actually use within your business? Things like software tools, programming languages, even share maybe some insights in terms of some of the projects that you guys are currently working on.
Okay, so we are primarily a Python house. So pretty much all of the work that we do is in Python, with a few exceptions. All of our data ingestion and analysis process is written in Python with Skippy or SciPy, however you choose to pronounce it, and pandas. We are heavily invested into the AWS as a cloud platform, making use of a growing number of resources and serverless resources such as Lambda, API Gateway, ECS, DynamoDB, step functions. We use Postgres as our main relational database behind the scenes, and that kind of predates AWS, so we just took it with us. And we use Tableau for our business intelligence user interface. We make use of agile technologies. So from our process point of view, we use Kanban. We use a piece of software called Business Map, formerly known as Kanbanize, to manage our stories and our Kanban boards, with all sorts of ceremonies along the way, such as backlog grooming, planning, retrospectives. We do paired programming and pull request reviews, etc., etc. As for the projects we're working on, right now we're 100% focused on that peer benchmarking product. The entire team it's just all about that, which is a React. We're running Material UI. It's a web application hosted with Amazon S3, API Gateway, all behind CloudFront. Prior to that project, though, we spent an entire year re-architecting our infrastructure into an AWS organization multi-account landscape with infrastructure as code, courtesy of Terraform, to deploy our entire infrastructure on a click of a button.
Awesome.
And then prior to that, we spent an entire year redesigning our data ingestion process so that with the new benchmarking software, we can load in as much data from as many clients as possible concurrently and just get it all happening at scale.
Excellent. Final question from me. So what advice would you give to any startups, in this field? I suppose, based on your own experiences so far.
So for this, I think I will use 4 Ps. Number 1, people. Getting the right people, not just technically, but also sharing the vision and the mindset and having like a cultural fit is extremely important to be in being successful as a small startup. Second P is prioritization. As a small company, you can't do everything. You have to communicate with both up and down to identify the things that are like really important for you right now. Even that can be difficult. You have to make those conscious decisions that some things we're not going to do them yet. The third P is process. So may have got the gist already from other things that I've said. I am very keen on best practice and agile practice and putting those into place. They're not there to get in your way and to be annoying. They're there to streamline the process and get you used to them so that they just happen without you thinking and they aid you. And if they don't fit, don't use them. It really has to aid you. And if it's not aiding you, stop. The last P is patience. In a startup world, you've got to do things at the right time. And as a technology person, there's been many times that I've been chewing my fingernails because I want to do something. This is failing. This needs fixing. That needs refactoring. We need to use this technology. But you've just got to be patient. Communicate through prioritization, but just be patient. When the time is right, do it, and then reap the benefits.
Awesome. Excellent advice. Well, look, no more from me. I just wanted to say thanks very much for joining me. And as always, when it comes to uploading this, I'll make sure to attach some information about the company and things like that as well. Obviously, tagging yourself on the page, etc. So look, thanks very much for having some time for me this afternoon. It was great to have you on.
Thank you very much, Jack.